What is up, guys? Welcome back to a brand new reaction, and today we're watching Bloody Mary, Mary the First of England. You know, I feel like everybody when they were little, they all had that older sibling or that older cousin that was like, hey, you should take this candle, go in your bathroom, turn the light off, stare into the mirror, say Bloody Mary 3 times, and wait for a freaking demon to pop up and scratch you. And when we were kids, we were like, you know what? That's a great idea. Give me that candle. And then, you know, we'd go in there, we'd do all the steps, and we'd say the name 3 times, and then we'd just be staring in the mirror, and absolutely nothing would happen. Until your other cousin that you forgot about pops out from behind the shower curtain and you piss yourself. God, we all went through that. Right? Right? So we're about to get into it. Go into the channel, hit that subscribe button, drop a like if you want to see more reactions like this. Click the link down in the description, go check out my second channel. But now, let's get into it.
When we think of a Bloody Mary, some of us may picture the spicy cocktail, the one containing
Sadly.
vodka and tomato juice. Others may best know Bloody Mary from the ghostly folklore. You know the one. Step in front of a mirror and chant her name repeatedly. Upon uttering her name 3 times or 13 times, depending on which version of the ritual you use, her
13.
apparition then appears to reveal your future. Allegedly, Bloody Mary will either show you an image of your future spouse or that of a skull, indicating that you'll die before having the chance to marry. If you
Damn, I didn't know that. We were always just told, yeah, she's gonna pop out and like grab you.
This tale as a child, your friends probably dared you to conjure her spirit in group play. If you're like us, though, you chickened out after reciting her name only twice. Mary has long been perceived as
got to see it through, my boy.
And there's a reason history granted her the title of Bloody Mary. Though to be among the top most evil queens in history, she spent her short 5-year reign developing a fearsome reputation for burning many Protestants at the stake in her attempt to reverse the English Reformation.
Damn, I just thought everybody was like, oh, well, there goes Bloody Mary again. Or like she'd do something and they're like, Bloody Mary. But no, she actual blood.
By fire, while forcing many to watch their peers burn. The unwilling spectators would then suffer the same fate afterwards. To say she was harsh is an understatement. She threw all of England into terror and chaos without showing any mercy. When we say no mercy, we're not kidding. She would even have pregnant women burned if she viewed them as heretics, all in the name of her religious fanaticism. Still,
oh my
if you know her
God.
background and origin story, you might start to question whether Mary was indeed a villain or if she was actually a victim of unfortunate circumstances. Before you think we're crazy for even suggesting it, allow us to explain. After learning about her story, you can decide for yourself what you think to be the case.
I mean, if she's burning pregnant ladies, I think I know what she's crazy, alright?
Before she was the crazed queen, she was just a little girl. Born in 1516, Mary Tudor was the only surviving child of King Henry VIII and Queen Catherine of Aragon. Initially, life for her started out great. She was a little princess beloved by her mother, her father, and the people of England. There was just one problem. She was a girl. Realizing there may be no other children, mainly no sons, to inherit the throne, Mary's mother Catherine groomed her at an early age for a promising future as the Queen of England to be. Catherine taught her Latin, thought at the time to be a man's language, so that Mary could someday fulfill the most masculine of roles, that of a sovereign. Though Henry was proud of this daughter, her accomplishments wouldn't be enough for him later, and he'd still want a son. Being the daughter of the King of England and the Spanish princess, Mary also was considered a hot commodity for marriage. Her hand was often promised to sons of various rulers for sake of alliances and political gain.
That's still wild to think that, like, back in the day, you didn't pick who you married. Like, your family was like, yeah, you're marrying old Billy Bob from down the street, and you're gonna like it. Like,
betrothals fell through, though. Wild. When she turned 11, only a year under the minimum legal age for marriage, her future betrothal was more seriously considered.
11?
Before she could embark into a successful marriage, however, something happened that would change her life forever.
Bro, at 11, I was, like, I don't even know what I was doing at 11. Like, I was still a kid. I couldn't imagine being like, yeah, son, I know you're still playing with your action figures and, you know, you like a Pokemon and all that, but you're marrying old Susie tomorrow, so that's just crazy to think about. Like,
her father fell madly in love with a woman, Anne Boleyn, and wanted a divorce with her mother. This was probably the biggest, most defining event for Mary due to the numerous repercussions that followed. It was from this moment on that Mary would never again experience a day of happiness. Now, before you jump to judgment and think, lots of children's parents get divorced, but they don't grow up to become murderers, we'd advise you to consider that the prospect of divorce was a way bigger deal than it is today, especially for royalty.
Yeah, that's
true. This was no ordinary divorce, but rather an event that would forever alter the course of English history. There was also a string of negative consequences that resulted from this momentous change that caused a lot of trauma in Mary's life. And on top of everything situational that was going on, Mary's health wasn't the greatest. Specifically, she experienced severe menstrual problems, thought today to be endometriosis. She had something known as dysmenorrhea, which gave her agonizing pain and cramping, worse than the typical monthly discomfort that many women endure. It was chronic and recurring. This was termed as her
Is this how she got the nickname Bloody Mary?
usual troubles or her old disease by royal physicians at the time. Her debilitating pain accompanied by irregular hormone fluctuations also frequently caused her serious depression, which only served to exacerbate her misery. Today, we now understand that stress can worsen symptoms of endometriosis, and Mary experienced plenty of strain when Anne Boleyn entered the picture. Mary's intense anxiety provoked a particularly nasty flare-up of agony in 1531. Soon after Henry forced her mother, Catherine, to leave court while treating Anne as the new queen-to-be. When her father, Henry, granted himself his divorce after being denied by the Pope, he disregarded Mary as illegitimate, claiming that he never truly lawfully married her mother.
Oh my God!
From being a loving and doting father to Mary in her early years to now being a vicious, neglectful parent.
Yo, hold on. So not only was she like severely depressed because they were getting a divorce, but he also kicked her mom out, tried to replace her with a new woman, and also was like, yeah, you're not my daughter anymore. I don't even like you. You're a monster. I can see why she's freaking angry. Like, maybe not burning pregnant ladies angry, but you know, I'd be a little mad too.
If you watched our other episodes, Why Did the King of England Execute His Wives, and The Worst Breakup in History, then you're probably already familiar with the events that transpired. Basically, in order to divorce Catherine and marry Anne, Henry had to make some very drastic changes. That is, he had to separate England from the Roman Catholic Church and start his own new Church of England. Since Catherine had been a devoted Catholic and Mary had always followed in her footsteps, this was highly devastating for her. The new Protestant Reformation was yet another factor, a major factor, that added to Mary's profound grief, because her strong Catholic beliefs held significant meaning for her.
But she's going through a lot.
To give them up. Many of the people of England loyally supported Mary, were on her side, and felt sympathy for both she and her ostracized mother.
Good.
After all, she'd been shamefully brushed aside while being publicly humiliated and disgraced by the harsh neglect and maltreatment of her father. She'd been embarrassingly downgraded from the high rank of a princess to a servant for her half-sister, Anne Boleyn, and Henry's new daughter Elizabeth.
What? They made her a servant? Yo, that's wrong. That is wrong.
Possessed a claim to the throne above her. Mary was a shell of what she once had been, and would now have to witness as little Elizabeth enjoyed the charms of her old life. It's fair to say that Henry VIII was cold to the daughter he once claimed to adore. Naturally, Mary would have probably felt very jealous of Elizabeth, sad, neglected, and unloved. This was obviously degrading for Mary's status, position, and pride, as she now lost the affections of her father. To make matters worse, she was no longer permitted to see her mother either. It was also around this time when Mary experienced another painful flare-up from her endometriosis condition. Without a doubt, this was a very lonely and depressing time for Mary, a time that would only serve to spark and fuel her resentment in later years to come, as she'd someday want to retaliate for all the painful suffering she'd been forced to endure.
Yeah, I feel like only Hollywood could write a better villain origin story. Like, bro, this was set up perfect. Like, we all knew she was gonna be Bloody Mary at some point. Like,
while all of these changes were taking place, the popular but hushed belief was that the king was making a mistake, that he was being bewitched by Anne Boleyn, and that he was turning his back on God by ridding the country of the Catholic faith. Many people asserted that Mary still had the rightful claim to the throne, even though she'd been stripped of her title as princess. The people had adored her mother Catherine as their queen, but they hated Anne for being, in essence, a homewrecker. For this reason, Anne was perceived as being the great whore, and Mary was thought to be a heroic symbol of rebellion among the English people. Not surprisingly, Mary's refusal to acknowledge the annulment of her mother's marriage and recognize Anne as queen and relinquish her own positions as princess greatly angered her father. During this time, Mary was in a very precarious situation. Her very existence was called into question, with whispers of possible allegations of treason to be tried against her. The year of 1536 provided two major life events, turning points in her future direction. First, Mary's mother died, which struck her with further painful grief. She was depressed beyond consolation and no longer believed there was a life for her in England. She wanted
this keeps getting worse and worse. Oh my goodness. Oh my.
Leave for her mother's home country of Spain. But then something else changed. Anne Boleyn was ordered by Henry to be executed for allegations presumably staged against her. Mary was extremely pleased with Anne's death. She had absolutely despised her for destroying her life. It also gave Mary a new sense of hope for her future. Perhaps her father had changed his mind. At once, Mary wrote to him, hoping to be welcomed back to court and back in his good graces. But in return, Henry wrote that he was still displeased by Mary's stubbornness and still wanted her to submit to his law. Despite Anne Boleyn now being out of the picture, Henry continued to push that his daughter Mary recognize herself as illegitimate and her mother's marriage to him as having been unlawful. He forced her to sign a legal declaration of this. Mary was fully aware that she could be put to death if she didn't sign it. After all, if Henry was capable of killing his wife, he could certainly kill his daughter. For the Tudors, family drama could be deadly. And it wasn't just Mary's life at stake, but the lives of her most prominent supporters as well. Thus, Mary reluctantly signed the dreaded document against her conscience. As a reward, she was welcomed back to court, earned back her father.
Can you imagine your dad saying, "Hey, I don't want you as my daughter. Sign these papers that make you not my daughter." Can you imagine having to do that?
Love, and was reinstated back into the line of succession. This brought her a decade of peace. You'd think it would have provided Mary with some form of a happy ending in this case, but you'd be wrong. The reality was that Mary would always live with a sense of guilt and regret for acting against her beliefs, the beliefs of God, and the beliefs of her now deceased mother, all to save her own skin and those of her friends and supporters. Yet, who can blame her? In many ways, though, she was her own harshest critic. Despite being back in good standing with her father, however, Mary still didn't marry during this time. This may be because, as we all famously know, Henry VIII was too busy collecting and discarding his own wives. Clearly, marrying off his first daughter wasn't much of a priority for him, so Mary remained single for a long time. Mary had also gained a brother, the son and heir that her father had desperately wanted, Edward VI. Mary was about 31 when her father died, and the young 9-year-old Edward took over as first in line to the throne. Mary was second in the line of succession, followed by her younger sister Elizabeth as ordered by Henry prior to his passing. But Edward, though very young, was a hardcore Protestant thanks to the influence that his advisors had over him. Thus, Mary once again fell into a threatening position due to her strong Catholic beliefs. This time, it was at the hands of her little brother, not her tyrannical father. Mary once again probably found herself in a familiar dark place, thinking there was no future and that her beloved Catholic faith would not survive this doomed world.
Yeah, and it's also wild that just because he was the boy, that it went straight to him and not to her. Like, what, she have like 20 years on him? Like, that's wild.
Years of stress and the constant monthly pain she endured from her endometriosis took its toll on her, and she became a very weakened-looking and bitter woman. Thankfully for her, Edward's reign didn't last long because he became ill and died at the young age of 15. Not wanting his Catholic sister Mary to take over the throne, Edward had requested upon his dying breath that this Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, succeed him. She would rule as queen for only 9 days before Mary's supporters rose up to help her take her rightful place on the throne. At the age of 37, Mary's reign as queen finally began. Mary entered London in a triumphant procession in 1553. The people of England wept tears of joy, elated that their beloved daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon was finally taking her place on the throne. Little did the people know what was in store for them. They didn't seem to realize the extent of Mary's anger and contempt. She was a queen fueled by resentment and passionate religious.
She's about to get serious, I know.
This obsession. She was determined to restore the Catholic faith and take revenge against those who had made her last 25 years so miserable.
Oh my God.
Protestants. She quickly became an unpopular queen with the initiation of her mass executions and burnings. To tie England with Catholicism even further, she finally got married to Philip II of Spain from her mother's native Catholic country. This, however, did not provide her with the happy life she so long desired. Though she adored her husband and was smitten with him, there is no record about how he felt about her in return, but we can speculate with a certain level of ease that he didn't feel the same way.
I wonder why.
The indicator of this has to do with rumors that were circling about Philip having affairs with other women. Another clue has to do with what Philip's closest confidant said to him when he praised him on his ability to deal with a woman with whom he could expect neither physical pleasure nor satisfaction. The now 38-year-old Mary was not exactly perceived as attractive, far from it actually, as the charms of her face had faded from years of intense mental pain and suffering. One Spaniard reportedly remarked, "The queen is not pretty, not at all, is low, fragile structures instead of fat. With very white hair and blonde, has no eyebrows, is holy. She dresses very badly. She was also getting older and her childbearing years were quickly slipping away. Though it's a harsh sentiment, Philip very likely only married Mary for political gain, not for love. This is made all the more sad when you consider that she had also gone through a period of feeling unloved by her father. It seemed she couldn't catch a break. Life had not been good to her, and her misfortunes would only continue. Soon after her marriage, it seemed though her luck had changed. When she stopped menstruating, felt nauseated in the mornings, and gained weight, her royal physician suspected she could be pregnant. People rejoiced, bells rang, and there were celebrations held on the streets. Though she grew a belly, however, there was no baby. It is possible that she had a tumor, though many assert she was experiencing a phantom pregnancy, a conditional phenomenon thought to occur when a woman wants a child badly enough and winds up deluding herself into believing she's pregnant while then displaying the classic bodily symptoms of pregnancy. At the time, there was no way to distinguish a false pregnancy from a real one, so the only way to find out for sure was to simply wait until the baby was born. A birth chamber had been prepared for her and a nursery contained a beautifully carved cradle. Many women were hired on standby to help care for the baby once it arrived. Letters announcing the birth had also been written and were ready to be sent. Time passed, but there still was no baby. In denial, Mary continued to insist that she could feel the child move in her womb. Rumors and speculations were quickly spreading as more time passed. Maybe Mary had lied about being pregnant to give people hope for an heir. Maybe instead of a baby, Mary would come to terms with the fact that she was not
What the hell?
After going through 2 false pregnancies, Mary faced the cold, hard reality that she would not have an heir. Her childbearing years were over. She was enraged with the idea that Elizabeth would succeed the throne after her. She hated Elizabeth as the daughter of Anne Boleyn, the woman who started all the misery in Mary's life. She was also incredibly jealous of Elizabeth because she possessed the 2 main qualities that Mary did not. That is, Elizabeth was both young and beautiful. After a short, disastrous reign, Mary died in 1558, most likely from ovarian cancer derived from her untreated endometriosis. Her vision for a Catholic England crumbled, and Elizabeth took the throne. Mary's husband Philip, whom she loved so wholeheartedly, wrote that he felt only a moderate grief for her. Mary was beguiled even after death because she was not buried next to her mother, as per her request. Instead, she ended up being buried next to Elizabeth. To make matters worse, the gravesite of Mary and her hated sister is a monument to Elizabeth, which completely overshadows her. Mary is commemorated only by a slab of black marble with the infamous name Bloody Mary on it. In this way, it seems that Mary has pretty much gone down as one of history's biggest losers. She had a terribly difficult life.
Bro, even after death, everybody was like, yeah, she sucks. Like, bro, what? That was like a roller coaster, bro. Like, and it just went straight down. Oh my gosh. But alright guys, that is going to do it for today's reaction. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about this down in the comments. If y'all want to see more reactions like this, let me know by hitting that like button. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure y'all go out today, spread love, spread kindness, do something nice for somebody today. I love you guys so much, I really do. JT Reaction, I'm out. Peace.